Does the Treasury Department or the various components of the FMOC have the authority to bail out Bitcoin?
Could you please elaborate? What exactly does bail out Bitcoin
Okay,
mean,
could you
Congressman?
instruct the banks of this country to buy more Bitcoin or change banking regulations?
Again, that within the context of asset diversification within banks, they could hold many assets.
Ranking member of our Capital Markets Subcommittee, Mr. Sherman, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to agree with the gentleman from Michigan that we need to impose those sanctions on the Myanmar regime and protect, of course, the Rohingya minority to the extent we can. FSOC has to define what is systemic. I, for one, think that we shouldn't be focusing on the assets, but rather the liabilities. We didn't have a problem in 2008 because the banks had too many assets. We had a problem because they had too many liabilities. So I don't see how most—
Congressman, that's incorrect. Ben Bernanke, then Fed chair, said, could you please tell me what these assets are?
I'm going to reclaim my time. Regardless of that, I'm going to ask you whether you— I'm not going to ask you to agree with me. I'm going to ask you to agree with your predecessor, Secretary Mnuchin. During the first Trump administration, that Secretary Mnuchin promulgated interpretive guidance that prioritized an activities-based approach to systemic risk regulation over an entity approach. Secretary Bessent, you have indicated that you want to kick off a review of FSOC's activities and processes. The FSOC Improvement Act, led by my colleague, Dr. Foster, which I've co-sponsored, as you know, would codify an activities-based approach to systemic risk regulation. Does the FSOC plan to revert to the 2019 guidance of the first Trump administration regarding a definition of a SIFI?
Yes, we prefer an activities-based approach rather than an institutional-based approach.
Thank you. I want to pick up on the ranking member's comments about whether tariffs cause inflation. You know, economists can say when the price of something goes up by 20%, that isn't inflation. It's a one-time price increase. But out in my district, when the price of something goes up by 20%, we call that unaffordability. And to say it's not inflation is a sophistry. I'll point out that every time Democrats had regulations that increased a company's cost, people in this room said that's going to cause inflation. Well, tariffs clearly have to be paid by companies, and if environmental costs are passed through, you can be sure tariffs are passed through. The ranking member asked the question, why a tariff on coffee and bananas? I think the answer is obvious: to make our tax system more regressive, to pay for the big, bad, beautiful bills, cuts in taxes for billionaires, and to fund ICE. I used to head the largest sales tax agency in this country, and we knew the sales tax was regressive, but we knew it would be even more regressive if we imposed sales taxes on food. And that is what you do with a tariff on bananas and coffee. Mr. Secretary, we lived through the bailouts of 2008. When powerful men lose money, they now want a government bailout. Does the Treasury Department or the various components of the FMOC have the authority to bail out Bitcoin?
Could you please elaborate? What exactly does bail out Bitcoin mean?
Okay, could you instruct the banks of this country to buy Bitcoin or change banking regulations so that they are encouraged to do so in terms of the reserves that they're otherwise required to have?
Again, that within the context of asset diversification within banks, they could hold many assets.
They can, and there are different, but do you have the authority to order banks to buy Bitcoin or to invest U.S. tax dollars in Bitcoin or Trump coin?
I am Secretary of the Treasury. I do not have the authority to do that, and as Chair of FSOC, I do not have that authority.
So we're not going to see our tax dollars invested in crypto assets?
Well, why would a private bank be your tax dollars, Congressman?
Excuse me, I'm now asking about the money of our taxpayers, which you manage as Secretary of the Treasury. Is it going to be deployed into crypto assets?
We are retaining seized Bitcoin.
That's not exactly taxpayer money. You collect a lot of taxes this month.
No, that is an asset of the U.S.
It's an asset of the U.S.
It was government.
And are you going to invest any?
And I will point out,
Mr. Secretary, reclaiming my time, are you going to invest?
The asset seizure, that $1 billion of Bitcoin was seized, $500 million was retained, and that $500 million has become over $15 billion.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, the ranking member of our Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Meeks, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Bessent, if I'm not mistaken, you were working in the financial service industry during the late 1980s, correct?
I was.
Thank you. And well, I'm wondering, do you recall or you're knowledgeable of the Keating 5 scandal back then?
Yes, sir. And I will point out that I was.
I don't want to.
No. I will point out that I identified.
The gentleman, Mr. Secretary, it's the gentleman from New York's time.
Right. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows, who doesn't know, that the Keating 5 scandal involved 5 U.S. senators accused of pressuring the Federal Home Loan Bank Board to expedite and give more consideration to the case of Charles Keating, Jr., who ran the California-based Lincoln Savings and Loans. It led to a 14-month investigation unveiling how 5 U.S. senators and staff ended up with more than $1 million in contributions, 4 trips to the Bahamas, and all expenses paid stays at resort hotels. Following the scandal, the industry saw sweeping regulatory changes that was launched by then-President George H.W. Bush. Now, Mr. Secretary, I'm sure you can agree conflicts of interest and improper influence by U.S. elected officials over bank regulators weaken supervisory independence and ultimately impose massive losses on consumers and taxpayers. I think that we can all agree upon that. And as we know, the basic lessons from the post-Keating reforms still applies today when the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, the OCC, is deciding to get a bank charter. I think we can stimulate that. Now, Mr. Bessent, as our nation's treasurer, I'm sure you also know that a foreign-linked investment firm tied to the United Arab Emirates government quietly bought about half of the Trump family's crypto company, World Liberty Financial. And at the very same time, the President of the United States was dealing with that country on foreign policy. Now, Eric Trump, the president's son and co-founder of World Liberty Financial, said, and I quote, "I'm not going to get into who the investors are, but I've got some pretty meaningful investors," end of quote. Lack of transparency. And it didn't end there. When Trump fans brought the tokens, they thought they were getting the deal of a century. But what they didn't know was that only Trump and his sons had the sole power to decide who can sell the token and when. Today, the price of the token has fallen over 50%, and the Trump fans who bought the token are now begging to get out. Now, I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. You can see it for yourself on the World Liberty Financial Discussion Forum, yourself, Mr. Secretary. So this is no longer just about a shady crypto deal or a possible gift when a foreign-linked investor is putting hundreds of millions of dollars into a company controlled by the president's family, and at the same time, this president is conducting foreign policy with that country. You know what that creates? It creates a national security concern. So, I'm not going to ask much of you, Mr. Secretary. I just want to know whether you will commit today to pause and heighten the scrutiny of any bank charter or licensing application at the OCC connected to the World Liberty Financial until all of these conflicts of interest and foreign influence reviews are completed and shared with the United States Congress. All I need to know is, will you halt it and do a complete investigation and scrutiny of this licensing application? All you have to ask is yes or no.
No, Congressman.
All you have to ask
the
is yes or no.
OCC is an independent entity, and I would know, Congressman,
I take that as a no.
You traveled to Venezuela to lobby
I take that as a no.
Chavez on behalf of your donors.
On behalf of your donors. You do not want to answer that question. I take that as a no.
For a $7 billion.
I'm asking you to do your responsibility as Secretary of the Treasury.
Into a Venezuelan.
You do not.
Mr. Meeks,
time
has expired.
You cannot erase what you did in 2006.
He's the one that went past your time, Mr. Chairman.
No,
he did not answer my question, and he wouldn't pass the time.
He had 6 seconds left to try to answer your question, and it
was a yes or no. It was a yes or no answer. I asked him, will he? No, it was yes or no.
The OCC is an independent.
Stop covering for the president. Stop being his flunky.
Gentlemen.
He's talking to me. I'm responding back to him.
2006 trip to Venezuela.
Stop covering for the president. Don't be a flunky. Work for the American people.
Mr. Meeks,
trip to Venezuela.
Work for the American people. Don't be a cover-up for a mob.
Maybe you're going to
as
see
long
your
as
friend
he talks,
Nicholas
you talk.
Maduro in
is
Brooklyn
not
prison.
recognized. Mr. Bessent, please.
Congressman Brad Sherman delivered one of the sharpest exchanges during Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's testimony, focusing on 2 issues that directly affect American taxpayers: tariffs and cryptocurrency. Sherman's first argument challenged the administration's claim that tariff-driven price increases are not inflation. While economists often describe tariffs as causing a one-time price adjustment rather than sustained inflation, Sherman argued that ordinary Americans don't experience economics through technical definitions. They experience it through higher grocery bills and rising living costs. His message was simple. If the price of coffee, bananas, or other everyday goods jumps by 20%, families don't care what economists call it. They simply know life has become more expensive. He also accused the administration of applying a double standard. Sherman noted that critics often argued environmental regulations would increase costs and fuel inflation. If that's true, he asked, why wouldn't tariffs, which also raise business costs, produce the same result? His criticism suggests the debate is less about economics and more about political messaging. The hearing then shifted to cryptocurrency, where Sherman raised concerns about the federal government's growing Bitcoin holdings. He questioned whether the Treasury Department has the authority to support or bail out Bitcoin by encouraging banks to purchase it or investing taxpayer funds into digital assets. Secretary Scott Bessent firmly rejected that idea, stating he has no authority to order banks to buy Bitcoin or invest taxpayer money into cryptocurrencies. However, he acknowledged that the U.S. government currently holds billions of dollars worth of seized Bitcoin, assets that have appreciated significantly over time. Sherman's argument wasn't that the government intentionally invested in Bitcoin, but that taxpayers are now indirectly exposed to a highly volatile asset. If Bitcoin's value continues to rise, the government benefits, but if it falls sharply, Americans could ultimately bear the financial consequences. Whether viewers agree with Sherman's conclusions or not, his questioning highlighted 2 broader political debates: who ultimately pays the cost of tariffs, and what role the federal government should play in the rapidly expanding cryptocurrency market. Both issues are likely to remain central topics as economic policy and digital assets continue shaping America's political landscape.